Hello and welcome back to my channel. So another kind of house related tips video today. I'd say this is probably one of my most requested on my Instagram when I've asked what video you want me to make. And this is just some saving tips really on how to get to the point where you've saved enough for a deposit on a property. Obviously everyone's situation varies so much and some of these tips won't be applicable to all, and some of them come under the head of duh and a bit obvious really, but sometimes you just need that little jolt, that reminder to do these things, so I thought I'd put them in there as well. And obviously some of them also come from a place of having to acknowledge how fortunate I am and privileged I am to be in a certain situation that allows me to do that particular thing, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a bit. Number one would be side hustle, because these days there's a lot of people in jobs that aren't paying really enough for the effort and work being put in. Many people are in jobs, some out of passion, some out of necessity, that aren't really paying the ideal amount for what they need, and so there isn't much left over to save and put aside. It's all gone on rent and just cost of living, and there's no disposable income to speak of. Even when they're not being excessive in any way, it's very hand-to-mouth sort of lifestyle. Unfortunately, a lot of people are having to live like this. People are using food banks, people are trying to seek money elsewhere and working harder than they really should have to work to just live a decent quality of life, but that's a whole nother topic for a video. The first thing is side hustles, jobs that you can do on the side, jobs that you can do on weekends, you can do in the evening, even on a lunch break, little things just to earn that little bit of extra money. Obviously there's pyramid schemes, but I'm not really going to talk about those today, but if you've got some kind of handy skills, perhaps you could advertise yourself as an odd job man, you know, someone that can clear gardens, take things to the dump for people, shear hedges, do small DIY jobs, anything like that. It could be just babysitting for neighbours. There's all sorts of side hustles, or if you've got an entrepreneurial spirit or a great idea, you could of course start your own side business, but obviously that's a bit more complex and time consuming and time intensive, so that's a big thing to undertake. Might not be something that someone that's already overworked wants to take on. And I guess Nomads was that for Simon last year, when his main job was actually working at a pub that was just across the road from us. It was by no means his ideal job, but it served a purpose. It was literally across the road from my house, which meant no money was going on travel costs commuting. He was great at his job, so he got a decent amount of tips on top of his wage. It was flexible, which was great. He could work more hours if he wanted to earn more money, and alongside that he would do Nomads, so then on the weekend he could still be earning money on top of his normal wage as well. So that was his side hustle. Obviously alongside my blogging, I occasionally do content creation for other people. I do styling, I do artwork, little bits here and there, dribs and drabs, but obviously I'm slightly limited because of health limitations. But so we've been doing some side hustles. That's something you could consider perhaps if you haven't already. In terms of making the most of the money you have, I'm very lucky in that I've saved as long as I can remember. Every year I would be putting stuff in an account that I wouldn't be allowed to touch. I generally put them in long-term ISAs. More recently I've been putting them in short-term ISAs because there was this chance that I might need to be able to access the money. I'm very lucky that my dad is fairly knowledgeable in all this sort of stuff and reads up on it a lot. So he'll tell me, oh, I'd recommend that you move your money to a different bank because they've got a better rate of interest right now, or I've heard that that bank's about to go under, so maybe you want to take your money out of that. Little tidbits like that. But if you don't have someone in your life that is knowledgeable on finances and you find it all a bit boggling, because it is boggling, it's a lot to take on. People like Martin Lewis are really invaluable. He's got his website which has so many great money saving and just money focused tips really, and he does a segment on This Morning that I always try and catch because he's always giving tips on things that you might not realise that you you're owed money, like he's done a lot about PPI recently, and just little ways, little tricks that you can be saving money every month that you might not be aware of. So check him out, and do consider how you're holding the money that you do have and ways that you can make the most out of that and get the most interest and just maximize what you've got, really. When it comes to my bills, something I've learnt to do just from, again, being around my dad, is to go on things like compare the market, but also check what your statements are and what your bills are, because quite often these companies will up their rates and hope to get away with it, hoping that you can't be bothered with the faff and the stress of changing your contract or changing the company that you're with. And they can be really quite cheeky and hike it up loads, and it's enough to make a considerable difference to how much money you've got to play with. So every time you notice a change or it comes in that, you know, they're putting prices up, give them a ring and have that uncomfortable chat where you do say, well, if you don't lower your prices, I will leave. Just haggle with them, tell them that you found some other offers that are better, and try and have those statistics with you and those facts so you can use them to your advantage, because they do generally like to have some information to back up your point, because obviously anyone could say, I found cheaper elsewhere. They want to know where you've seen it cheaper elsewhere, and just basically get to a point where they're fighting to keep you to stay with them. And Sai's been doing it later to great effect, and we've got some great discounts, particularly on, I think it was Sky, on a Sky package, and Virgin we got some great reductions, so definitely give that a go. I know it's not comfortable for everyone. I hate this sort of thing. It's not natural, but the more you do it, the more it will feel like the normal thing to do. And also, they're just betting on the fact that people can't be bothered to do this stuff. They know that they're being cheeky and at times asking way over what they should be asking. So even if they act like they're being very reasonable or asking a reasonable amount, they'll know that they're not. They'll know that they're trying to get more money off you than they should be. Another tip is sacrifice. I know it's a very boring and depressing thing to say, but oh, plain. For us, we made a conscious decision that for the time being we wouldn't get a pet, because pet insurance on top of, you know, vaccinations, food, any things that might happen that you can't predict, it all costs money, and right now we don't have enough spare money to put into that, or at least till now we haven't. So for us it was a big sacrifice not to have a pet, because you guys know we love animals, but we did have to think about money, and it was more important for us to put money aside to hopefully move out, which we've done, than have a pet around. But again, it's a personal decision that. Thankfully, things like borrowing my doggy mean that you can have the joy of spending time with animals, dogs specifically, without having to pay any money, which is fantastic. And you get them for a day and then you can give them back when they start to be a little bit annoying, which is great. It's an obvious thing to say, but I know my friend Lara, she's doing a no spend year where she's not buying anything that she really doesn't need. No frivolous or trivial shopping of any nature. But if there are things that you still need to get, like you genuinely need, and of course there's likely to be some of those things, what I would recommend, and it's the way I consistently shop now, is to look for secondhand, look for upcycling projects, look for eBay things. Like even yesterday I got a book for holiday, and instead of buying it from a shop brand new, I got a secondhand one on eBay and saved, I don't know, probably 70%. Because I don't care if a book's been read before and there might be a crease in a page. I mean, who cares about that? So there's so many ways to save money if you just think about getting secondhand, or just even asking if any of your friends have things that they don't need anymore, that they're not using, if you're looking for something specific. Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Depop, Shpock, local for sale groups, Gumtree, all of those. I've had so much success shopping in this way. It's just nice not to feel guilty as well when you shop, when you know you should be saving but you still need to buy things. It's a great way of doing it. Holidays. So obviously We really wanted to not spend money on holidays last year, but you can't always plan for things. There's events that you have to go to. Last year we ended up going to America, which was really, really expensive. We tried to do it in as cost-effective a way as possible, but again, that was a big outlay that if we were just thinking money focused, it wouldn't have fitted in with our scheme. But that's life. Life doesn't always work with your plans and stuff, so you just have to work with them and find ways to do things on a budget. Look for deals. If you feel you need a holiday for your mental health and your well-being, but you want to save money, why don't you see if there's someone you know that wants to do a house swap? You might have a friend that lives up in Manchester and you're in London and they want to have a weekend break and you want to have a weekend break, and you can just do it for free and just borrow each other's places and have a really nice city break. You might have a friend that's got an apartment in Mallorca that might want to do it. Who knows? But that's a way of doing it very cheap, because I used to advise people to have just like a UK break and stuff, but these days a lot of them are quite expensive, and it does build up when you factor in petrol and the cost of the Airbnb or the cottage or whatever. But a kind of house swap might be a good way to do a little trip at least and have that feeling of getting away for a little bit. Now for me, over the years, I'd say online shopping or kind of fast fashion type shopping has been my downfall. I think there was a stage in my blogging where I thought my downfall was that I didn't do enough fashion hauls, I wasn't doing enough lookbooks, and that people didn't like my content because I wasn't showing enough new outfits all the time. So I went through a stage of, you know, buying it all, I don't need to mention the brand names, you know what kind of shops I'm talking about, and doing these hauls and stuff, and I didn't need new clothes. I wanted them, of course, but I didn't need them, and it became a little bit of, I wouldn't say quite an addiction, but definitely a habit, like part of my work process in a way, that I thought, oh, it's time to do another haul kind of thing, which is just silly when you think about it. And I think also because I've struggled with depression over the years, I think buying things I liked almost, I think I enjoyed that temporary high it gave me, that I felt nice or excited and I liked wearing the new outfit. But you know, these things pass. So I think it's working out what your particular vice is. For some people, it will be that they go out and get steaming drunk with their mates a bit too often. It might be gambling, it might be sex, whatever it is. Work out what it is and how that perhaps is impacting your finances. For me, I found that if I don't allow myself on the online shops, I don't have a slip up really. As soon as I allow myself to start scrolling, I get that feeling of I want to buy again and I make a purchase. So if I don't allow myself onto the sites, that's a good start. I also, if I know that Instagram tends to be the thing that leads me to going on the site by clicking that link, I unfollow those accounts. And even actually bloggers that tend to enable me a little bit and encourage me to spend in that way, I mute or unfollow those if I know that I'm a little bit vulnerable to their selling capability, shall we say. So it's about working out what you think, what your problem is. So you might want to think about where you spend money, where you think you could cut back. I'm lucky in that I'm not a big drinker, so I'm not spending tens or even hundreds of pounds on a weekend having a wild one and going bar hopping and stuff like that. If that is you, you might think about, one, the type of drink you're drinking and whether it's one of the more affordable ones, whether you drink at home more rather than going out to expensive pricey bars in the city. It might be that actually you try and challenge yourself to a couple dry months, and you know, with the motivation that, you know, getting a deposit for house is what you get in return for having a dry month, you might find you're more successful had you attempted a dry month with no kind of other motivation going on. So this might be good in so many ways for your health, for your well-being, but also for your bank balance. Sticking to a list when you go to shopping is vital. When you go with no list whatsoever, you just get tempted to put, oh, that looks nice, I'll put that in the trolley. Oh, what about that? We haven't tried that before, let's try that. Try and stick to a rigid list. If you know you're not good at that, actually do one of those online delivery shops instead, where just the things that you've ticked in the box will get delivered, and you won't have that temptation to get something that's right by the counter, for instance, to add to it. See if there's any vouchers, look in newspapers, look in magazines for vouchers. But also when it comes to eating out, I think it's hard because I think people make blanket statements like, if you're struggling for money, you shouldn't ever eat out. But the culture is different these days. It's become the norm to eat out quite regularly, or order in and get delivery food and takeaway and stuff. I would say that look at how often you are doing it. When you add up how much you're spending a month, does it seem quite a lot that could contribute quite heavily to a deposit? Then you might want to reconsider how regularly you do it, or what limits you might put on yourself. And for instance, when me and Si go out for dinner, we try and look on voucher codes and see if there's one that's got an offer on, and if there is one, we're more inclined to go to that place and use a voucher rather than just any old place where we don't get any money off, or there's no 2-for-1 deals going on. We also have started to try and order things that work well as leftovers that we can use throughout the week. So it's not just one meal if there's leftovers that we chuck out. It's ones that Si can take to work and heat up in the office, or I can have as a lunch on the Monday or the Tuesday if it's been a weekend takeaway, that sort of thing. So it's spread out and you're getting your money's worth, basically. A big money saving thing for me personally, not for Si sadly, but for me, is not having a car. I don't feel safe to drive right now, and that's why I don't have a car. But the fact that I don't have to, one, pay for buying a car, pay for the insurance, the MOTs, the tax, and for petrol, undoubtedly that saves me a hell of a lot of money. So I think you've got to ask yourself whether you genuinely need that car, and whether, you know, if you weigh up how much you would spend on public transport, whether it would actually work out better for you to do that for the time being, because you can always buy a car again in the future when you're in a bit more of a financial stable position. This is obviously a very personal thing, because if you've got kids that need dropping off at school and that sort of thing, this isn't a viable option. But if you're someone that just uses it for fun road trips or just to go nip down the shops, then maybe you don't need a car, and maybe that's a way you could make a huge saving. But again, in terms of car insurances and things like that, make sure you're going on Compare the Market and getting yourself a good deal on car insurance, etc. Obviously, I was in a very, very privileged position in that I could live with my parents while I was saving, and it was in a place that was still relatively convenient. I could still go into London for work. Not everyone is in that fortunate position. They might have parents that are willing to have them stay, but it might not be in a great location for them work-wise, or they might have parents that aren't happy with them to stay. There might not be room, all sorts of factors. So I have to acknowledge that I am in a very privileged, lucky position to have been able to do that, and to have my boyfriend in as well. I mean, yeah, that's not the norm, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And that allowed us to save and not spend the money we did earn on London rent, which, as we know, is extortionate. But I do see a lot of my friends constantly stressed about not being able to ever get on the property ladder, or just being extremely stressed about money in general. And they're people that are living in London who perhaps aren't really in the financial position to live in London. I feel like some people think you have to live in London, it's the only place to be, it's the only place that you can be relevant, that you can have a good career, that you can have a good social life, that you can be happy, and it's just not true. I think you have to ask yourself, if you are finding yourself stressed about money or struggling, and you are in a position where you have the freedom to move and there's really nothing keeping you in an area, do you have to be there? Because you could move out, just move out a little bit for a couple of years and save so much money and then be in a much better position. Obviously, again, as I was saying earlier, this isn't possible for everyone. Some people need to stay in certain areas because they care for family members. Perhaps their kids go to a school that they don't want to move them from. There's all sorts of reasons. Perhaps, you know, a medical place that they need to visit regularly is nearby where they are now. So many reasons. But for a lot of people, it's actually becoming, they don't need to live in London. They just love living in London because there's social life, because there's bars on the doorstep, so they can go to all those events they want to go to, those gigs. But really, in terms of if you want to get that deposit, you're making that decision actually. You're making a choice about what you want more there. This is just in some cases. Like I said, some people really feel they need to be in London for certain careers, for example. If you are currently renting somewhere, perhaps you could, you know, consider a house share that has more people, so you're all paying a little less each month. Of course, that comes with its difficulties. You maybe lack the privacy. If you're a couple, you might be in with loads of other people and it's not exactly the most romantic setting for you. Flatmates can be annoying, housemates can be annoying, and you might be at that stage of your life where you're like, I just don't want to live with loads of people anymore because it feels a bit too much like uni. With a lot of this, it's about finding out what you are willing to make sacrifices on for what you might possibly gain, whether the gain is worth it for you for those years of sacrifice, if you know what I mean. I did a Help to Buy ISA ahead of purchasing this flat, so I was putting money into that regularly. Unfortunately, after this had all gone through, my solicitor called me to say the Help to Buy ISA wasn't going to come through for me. So this is just a reminder that I still think it's a great thing to do, but please check a few things. Check what the top budget of the property is for your area. I presume because our house prices are the same as London areas and we're just outside of London, that it would be, we would get the Help to Buy ISA on anything up to 450. But it turned out that it was way lower than that, even though there aren't actually many properties in this area that you can even get for that amount. So that's a bit of a flaw in the system, but I just wanted to point it out so other people are aware that you know what the figures are that you need to stick within to be viable for the Help to Buy ISA paying out the money. But yes, there's things like Help to Buy ISAs. Obviously, you could look into Share to Buy as well, but I don't know too much about that. The whole concept actually hurts my head, but I know a lot of influencers are doing content on that at the moment. So maybe check that out if you think getting a deposit on your own for a property that you need isn't going to work out for you or be easy for you to achieve. I think we are nearing the half-an-hour mark again, surprise, surprise. I'll wrap this one up for now, but I'll do another kind of saving type video soon. But if you have any things you want to add to this video, do put them in the comments and help everyone out that might be searching this video and finding this video and looking for actual realistic and helpful tips. Just put them below and let's make this a really helpful community here for anyone looking to get on the property ladder, because it's very hard these days, and I think we have to acknowledge that things aren't easy for people, and sometimes it is a case of a lot of sacrifice, thinking outside of the box, and maybe working a bit harder than we should have to work to get there. But wishing you lots of luck and hope some of this helps, and I will see you in another video soon.